Hello, my delicious co-creators. Lilou here on the Juicy Living Tour. I'm in Mills Valley, right across San Francisco. You cross over this beautiful Golden Gate Bridge, and here you are in Mills Valley, which is absolutely beautiful. I'm with Debra, and I'm so excited to be introducing you because I think you're one of those angels on earth. I mean it, and I love working together. Debra is actually a book writing coach and an amazing woman that worked for many, many years with Debbie Ford that you probably have heard of, and that is working with me through my next books in English. And it's been just one of those encounters that is just yes, all over the place. There is just no doubt. There is just pure love. There is co-creation, and it makes all perfect sense. And I love these encounters, and I feel so blessed to meeting you in person today and be in your home. So thank you.
Oh, it's so amazing to have you here. It's so moving to have you sitting here on the couch with me. You wouldn't believe how good this feels to actually be with her. It is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we could stay in that thank you. I mean, I swear we could be in that silence and thank you. But there's so much beautiful things that I would like to share about your work and about, you know, how we connected too, of course. And what are some of the tips that you have for people that want to write? Because I know this is, a lot of people feel this urge of writing, and you're a coach for that, but you also have those tips that people can apply right now. So there is all of that to cover, all of this deliciousness. And but first, you know, I know that you've been watching for some time those interviews, and here we are.
Well, yeah. So you mentioned Debbie Ford, and I think she plays a really pivotal role in this. And but to the point about how long I've been watching your videos, I think I've been watching now for about 3 or 4 years, definitely for the past 2 years regularly. And I was telling Lilou that I've gotten to where I really look forward to the sound of the intro music to the videos because it's such a happy feeling. Yeah. And so last February, Debbie Ford passed away, or made her transition into light, and which was a very intense passage, you know, for me as it has been for so many people, because she has played such a pivotal role in my life as a teacher, a mentor, a friend. And it was within a few days after her passing that I really got this inner prompting to email you. And I keep feeling like that somehow Debbie had a hand in that, to say, yes, sisters, you know, connect. Because I know you had interviewed her, yes?
Yes, over Skype, unfortunately, never in person, but I so enjoyed that moment, yes.
Yeah, I met Debbie back in the late 90s after her first book, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, came out. And I had been a conference director, which you know now, and I worked for a company called Whole Life Expo. And Debbie's new book had come out, and she came and spoke at many events with us, and everybody on our staff fell in love with her. And I ended up doing her first coaching training, which was the Ford Institute for Integrative Coaching at the time, and that was in the year 2000 to 2001. I did a year-long coaching training with her, and I did the shadow process and just stayed closely connected. And then fast forward to 2005, I went to work for her full-time as her editorial assistant. And, you know, I think I can't even really measure the impact she's had on my life in many, many ways. And certainly one of them is around my writing, because I had done a lot of writing before I met her. I'd done a lot of copywriting. I had always felt that I would write books and that I wanted to help other people in the process. And when I went to work with Debbie, I did a lot of writing with and for her. We wrote a lot of marketing copy together, and you know, radio show outlines and teleconference outlines and newsletters and blog posts, and then I worked with her on her book called Why Good People Do Bad Things. That was my first real kind of deep dive into editing a full book. And then we worked together on the consciousness cleanse, the 21-day consciousness cleanse. I helped her to write that one. And then I got to help edit. I was not the only one, but I did help to edit the last book that she wrote called Courage. And so she was such a champion for me around writing. She just insisted, you have to write. And so she was a real believer in my ability to edit and write. And so that's, yeah.
Yeah, it's wonderful because it's such an intimate process, huh? So you knew her really closely, and you have to when you write, don't you?
Yes, that's a really great point. Yeah. And she taught me a lot about that kind of intimacy because, there's a whole alchemy that happened that I never tried to figure out, but I loved to listen to her and then capture what she was saying. And a lot of times we would be talking and I would have my laptop and I would say, hold on, I have to capture that thought. And those thoughts would turn into God knows what. It would turn into, in some cases, a book like The Consciousness Cleanse, just capturing what she was saying. Yeah. And I guess what I want to say about Debbie is that she was very open that way. She was very much about the co-creativity of, she would get into a zone and she would start to talk, or she would start to just tune into her relationship with spirit. And she would just flow from that place. Yeah. And she was so willing to have me and there were other people that did similar things with her. So does that make sense, that she was so willing to be in the process together?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the process, right? For anybody that is writing or that is working with another person, this connection is something. I bet it's not that easy to find that again. So strong this was, no?
Well, it was a particularly unique friendship and kind of student-teacher kind of relationship as well. But since I ended up leaving La Jolla, leaving working full-time with Debbie, and set it off on my own to work with other authors on their books. And I've continued to marvel, and still to this day, I marvel at how open people are to the co-creative writing process. And it's so interesting. A lot of people think about writing as this very solitary endeavor. And it can be, as you know from writing your books, there are times when it's just you and your words, right? But one of the revelations for me over the past 5 to 7 years has been how often writing really is a co-creative process. There's the author and editor, author and proofreader, author and ghostwriter. I mean, there's so many configurations, and
with the reader, like I really feel when I'm writing or when I'm in the process that there is already that listening. That's the weirdest thing. It's like it's beyond time and space. Like there's already somebody. I feel that connection.
I'm so glad you put it that way. And I know we were talking a little bit before the interview about that, how I too feel like writing is an opportunity to really be connected and intimate with people, like really close. By intimate, I mean close and vulnerable and open. And that I know for me too, when I'm writing or editing for somebody else, that it is about the one reader, right? Is that your experience too? Is like you feel that presence of someone? Yeah.
And it's beautiful, and I feel we're more and more maybe compelled to do it that way. Maybe it's I think it's evolving too. No, the writing. Have you experienced that too? The evolution of writing, or what the reader is looking for as far as the form, or?
Wow, is that a great question? So, if I just go with what comes up, it's a beautiful question. I've never had anybody ask that question. I think that, yes, I think that we are all evolving, and I do think that just like when people go to events now, or they, a conference, or they go to a workshop, or I shouldn't just say they, because I'm the person too who's going to the workshops and going to the teleconferences. I think we want less distance. Do you feel that too? Oh, yeah. Yeah, less distance, more connection. So yeah, I think that people's expectations and desires around what they're reading, I mean, people will often say, well, we all read so much now because of being online so much, and we can't take in as much. We need smaller snippets. I think that's a part of it. You know, I think a lot of us used to reading smaller amounts of writing at one time. So we want our books oftentimes to be shorter, our chapters to be shorter. But I think even more than the shorter and more digestible, it is what I think I sense from you too, is that people want more connection. Yeah.
And not feel that distance between the teacher and the reader. We just want to be part of this.
Yeah. Rather than the hierarchy of, you know, the one who knows and the one who's going to find out. Yeah. And I mean, you know, it's funny because, I mean, I think that it's important to claim what we do know. Yeah. You know, I think in order to write something that's clear and coherent, we need to be able to own, like, yes, I have done this work, I have lived this life, I have experienced this, and therefore I'm going to write about it. But not so much, I think, in a way that authority has a different tone now, you know. And yeah, I mean, with your work with the YouTube channel that you have, I mean, I think it's actually a great example of how people want, you know, quicker access, and, you know, don't want to have to go through so many filters to get information and to feel connected. Yeah.
And that's why I'm wondering with the writing, actually, if that has evolved in the sense that people still reading, you know? I mean, there's tons of books being sold, but how is that now? It seems like people love watching videos. Is there still really room for books?
Oh, what a great question. Well, I meant to get some statistics ready for you, and I just realized now I didn't do that, but I do know that ebook sales have exploded over the past couple of years. So people are definitely still reading. You know, the self-help, you know, self-help field, the books in the self-help field are still selling like crazy, but the ebook, you know, the Kindle versions of things are really just, that's exploded. And I remember back about 2 or 3 years ago, I was on a teleconference with Jean Houston, and she said, I remember her saying, and I know some of you out there might not like this, but she said the publishing industry is dead. And Jean, if you're listening to this, I know I'm paraphrasing, not doing it justice, but she said something to that effect, that self-publishing is where it's at. And I think that, you know, there's still room for both, and, you know, and even, you know, let's say with your books, for example, you may find that in the future you have both your self-published books and a publishing company behind you with some of them. So reading has not died. You know, people are still buying books, but they're buying them differently. Yeah.
You are a ghostwriter, you are an editor, but you're also this coach. So, and you take people's hand and walk them through it. What are some of those advice that you give to people in those coaching when they're ready to write, or maybe right at the beginning? I know the fear of this blank page. A lot of people do want to write a book. I mean, come on, we all have a book inside of us. That's something, I feel.
Yeah, I was just on the phone with AT&T about my cell phone bill a couple of weeks ago, and the guy I was talking to at AT&T said, "What do you do?" And I forgot why that came up, but he wanted to know what I did, and I told him, and he said, "I want to write a book." And so we had this delightful conversation. So everywhere I go, I meet people who have a book in them, at least one. And one of the things that I tell people is to go ahead and give yourself enough structure to get yourself going, but don't be afraid of it locking you in. And what I mean by structure is create an outline, create a chapter outline. Take your chapters and break those down. Create basically outlines for your chapters, but don't feel hemmed in by that. I think some people feel like once they commit to an outline that they're going to be squeezed in and aren't going to have room to move. And the look on your face tells me that you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about, because I was supposed to write a book for my French publisher, and then I got stuck in that structure, and I felt really good when I created it, and then oh my God, then I have to fill it up, but this, I don't have as much to say there, but I have more here. And
I love that you're bringing that up, because and again, I think that any suggestions I would give people can be adapted and readapted, because I think having structure, I guess there's a paradox, because when I think of structure, when I think of creating an outline for a book or for a chapter, I think of it as a scaffolding for something that's being built and crafted and shaped and created. But at any time it can be changed. And to let yourself have just enough structure to keep you focused. Now, you said something that brought this one thought up that I want to share, which is that if you find yourself stuck, let's say you're on chapter 2 and you're in the second section of your chapter 2, and it's a topic that you're very excited about, and you start to write, and you say to yourself, I'm gonna take 2 hours and I'm gonna just write whatever comes out, and you find yourself 20 minutes in completely stuck and thinking, why did I ever think I was going to write a book in the first place? To try to not let that stop you, to say, okay, I'm going to push the pause button on that topic, and I want to go to this one. I'm going to go to chapter 3, or I'm going to go to chapter 6, or I'm going to go to chapter 12, or wherever, and go ahead and, go where the energy's taking you. Go where your enthusiasm is, where your passion is, where your interest is. And in a sense, I think that it works very well to create a patchwork with your writing. And so for me, I think of the structure as something that helps me to relax and know, okay, so I have these, let's say 12 chapters, and I've written 2 chapters and they're pretty solid right now. I'm really stuck in chapters 3, 4, and 5. I'm going to go on to chapter 6, and I'm going to do some writing there. And then I'm going to come back to 3 or 4.
Such a good news. Oh my God. Is that a good news for other writers? I can totally relate to this one. Oh my goodness. Feeling at ease with wherever, and just not, because it felt like we had to start from the beginning until the end that way. Otherwise it didn't felt authentic. But no, that's not what you're saying.
Exactly. And I think that, granted, it can be frustrating to have a book, let's say 95% written, or maybe you've got the entire first draft written, and somebody reads it and critiques it and says, you need to get, and I've seen this happen, like, you need to get rid of this chapter, or you need to take that story out of chapter 4, and you need to put it in chapter 1. And those sorts of big kind of moves can be daunting. But I've gotten to the point now, with having worked on 17 books with other people so far, that once I get a first draft down with my client, those kinds of moves are a lot less daunting now. Now it feels like manageable. That I don't want to be afraid of change, I guess is the thing. To let change occur. Like, even in talking with you, Lilou, we've talked about you wanting to edit your first book a little bit, and maybe your second book. Yeah. And there you are. You're willing to look at a little bit of change, or and
without changing the facts and the how it is, but just like I know there's other levels of it, so that the lessons are even more potent.
Exactly. Well, I've been working on a book with an author. I can't name the book yet because it's coming soon, but it's a very exciting book with an amazing woman who I've been working with, and she recently made the choice to take out the first 2 chapters, and it was just a very interesting process to just entirely take out the first 2 chapters. Yeah. So I don't know if I'm conveying this point that well, but I think the thing is that it is a paradox to me to have the both, and to have structure to bring focus of attention, focus of time and energy, and then to know that you have infinite freedom to change things. And like, you're a great example, because you already wrote your first 2 books and put them out there and have been selling them, and people are reading them, and you're still willing to look at another kind of wave of change with those books. And I think that that's the thing. Like, books they have a life of their own.
Yeah, They're begging for this. I can see them, and it's funny. It's like babies. It's kind of like they feel like they're alive, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
It's like, okay, you're gonna have a little facelift, or a little, not facelift, but a little change. You know, but this is for the best. And it's like the book is crying for it. Like, please take me there. Oh yes, it feels right.
Yeah. Well, and one more thing about the sort of structure piece. I've heard some writers and people who teach writing talk about chunking your work. And I think that that's a great word that can help when people feel daunted by the process of writing, to give yourself permission to write your work in chunks. And by a chunk could be a paragraph, it could be a half a chapter, it could be 2 sentences. But I just think that when we allow our thoughts to come out and just capture what's there, and even if we find a home for it later. Yeah. So that's the part of the paradox is, and this is actually, as I'm thinking about it, this is something that I really learned from Debbie when I was working with her, that she would oftentimes write and not want to have, she literally would not want to have any idea where in the book that piece was going to go. She was so trusting that what was coming through needed to be written down, and it could find and would find its proper place in good time. And so that's sort of the paradox, is writing from both places, both writing, allowing yourself to write where you just let it flow, and you don't even need to know where it's going to go in the book. And then sometimes it's exactly having the structure of a working outline that will help to give you fuel to do something. Yeah.
What are your suggestions when there's this, as far as scheduling, or how often do I write? When do I write? And how about if it's not happening when I write? And should I write in the morning, in the evening, after meditating, after eating, after this little piece of banana? If I don't, then the flow is not going to be better, and this and that. There's all those little blocks.
Well, I'd love to answer that in 2 ways. One is that, and I don't think anybody will be surprised to hear me say that I think everybody has to find their own rhythm. Yeah. But I also think that our own rhythm changes. Like for me, I have found that mornings, like mid-morning, works really, really well, and afternoon works really well. I'm not a real late night writer. And I'm not a real early morning writer. Some people love to get up at 5 a.m. when the world is really quiet.
Like Wayne Dyer, and we hear that and we're like, oh my God, if I don't write early morning, then that means I'm not going to be a great writer.
Yeah, exactly. So
all those comparisons.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. We have to. Well, not have to. It's an invitation to find our own rhythm, what really works, and that's in a way just one of the transformative aspects of writing, whether you're writing your own books or whether you're working with people, as I have been, to edit and write their books. We get to learn so much about ourselves. And I think that, I would say this, that I think that, and again, take this, I think everybody would need to kind of filter this through their own likes and dislikes and needs and desires. But I think that one of the beauties of having a publishing contract is that the author has an editor at the publishing house who has expectations, who's calling them on the phone saying, we're expecting your first 30 pages in about 30 days, right? So there's something very powerful and positive about having these people, this company, waiting for you and expecting things from you. So for people that are going to self-publish, or that just want to go ahead and write, and they don't even want to have to think yet about, am I going to self-publish, or am I going to find an agent, or that kind of thing. I think it's really valuable to create or make or find some kind of facsimile of that kind of deadline. And I wish I had a better word than deadline, because it's such a heavy word. But I think it's really helpful to kind of create the word structure is coming up again. It's like to know that it's important that you have your book, the first draft, written by, let's say, October 31st or January 1, or to create. And you could even, people could call on a coach like me, or they could create a structure around them with their friends. They could say, okay, I want to create this kind of book mastermind group with my closest friends. And I want them to know that my desire is to have my book written by, my first draft written by this date. And then they can kind of help hold me accountable to that. Does that make sense? Yeah. So
those are all great advice.
How was it for you when you were writing your books? Were you good about keeping on track, or?
It's very different. Each book is so different, I feel. The first one was boom, it all happened all so quickly. The second one, it took more time because it's over a longer period of time, and then the way I was working with the editor, it just took a bit more time, but there was more content too. And now this third one is just so different, and I'm writing it in French this time, so it's a different dynamic, a different language, and then translated. And then that's when there's a translator, that's when there's somebody that makes sure it stays coherent and with the tone, and that it really represents the person, because that's dreadful, for an author, when there's somebody else translating, like, oh my god, what is this going to be translated into? It's like there's so, like, just those little things that are hard to translate sometimes in another language from another. So it's going to be an interesting process going on the other side, from French to English.
Yeah. Well, and as you're describing your process, Lilou, I realize that not everybody, I realize that I have a particular orientation to working with people and talking with people who feel a kind of urgency inside. Like, I have this thing that I have to say. And so, I don't want to exclude the people in my conversation with you here who want to write, but they don't feel a big rush. They don't feel a big urgency. Mm-hmm. But because they exist, and but I also want to really kind of turn my focus toward those people who feel that deep urgency. On one level of consciousness, they may be aware that their work in the world would be expanded by writing, that certain doors would open for them if they were to write their book, and I think that's all very valuable and valid. But you and I were talking earlier about the transformative aspects of writing, and which I think encompasses all of it, but that sense of urgency of, I have this burning in my soul kind of thing to write. Whether that burning in my soul has to do with a business book, or a workbook, or a book on relationships, or whatever the topic is, I love that burning. I love that burning.
Yeah. And it's something that we feel inside, and we all have our ways of working, of course. Because it's surprising. There's some resistance to sometimes in some chapters and in some deadlines, and it's a transformative personal process to write a book. Oh my goodness, isn't it?
Yeah, and you just said one of the best words, I think, which is resistance.
Resistance to change, resistance to blend in, resistance to go with the flow, resistance to just surrender.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's one of that. I have goosebumps now, because that, I think, is one of the most transformative aspects of writing, is that it will bring up resistance. It will. And this is kind of, again, one of the paradoxes of resistance, because if we can meet the resistance, if we can face the resistance, the very thing that we're wrestling with, it can unlock so much for us, right? It can, I think one way, resistance can show up in so many ways. I mean, we talk about writer's block. That's one form of resistance. And I'm also working on another book that I can't mention yet because it's not out yet, but there's a whole, I can just say that with this amazing author, there is a whole chapter that we were just working on resistance. So it's also very fresh in my mind, because we were talking about and writing about like how the faces of resistance, and how it can show up as procrastination. It can show up as self-doubt. It can show up as comparing ourselves to other people. And I almost think, tell
so
me.
easy to go there. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Resistance to another author, like on a topic I remember during the second one, like, oh no, I'm not going to write this because Jerry and Hester Hicks talks about the law of attraction and about money around the law of attraction. How can I even dare to put this book out because they did? And what do I have to share? You know, it's like, ah.
Oh my God. This is one of my favorite topics. In fact, I'm glad you brought up Abraham and Jerry and Esther Hicks, because I remember watching or listening to an audio program from one of their workshops, an Abraham workshop, and this woman was talking to Abraham about the book that she was working on what was the topic? I guess the topic isn't that important, but it was something like conflict resolution. That was it. And she was a conflict resolution expert, and she asked Abraham, there are lots of other books out there on conflict resolution, and I don't know if I should even be bothering to write this book. And Abraham said to this woman, it literally doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that other people have written books on this topic. Yeah. It doesn't matter if people have written 100,000 other books on your topic. Yeah.
And the best proof is, look at all these videos, look at all those different topics, and we keep on saying the same thing from different people with different versions of it, and we're not getting it the same way, and then one will hit it and then the other one won't. It's just, so I can definitely, even though if I can't see that, or I couldn't see that with books, I can see it through those videos. It doesn't take anything away from the other book.
Mm-hmm. That is a really good example, like the videos too, that like you've interviewed Wayne Dyer, who we both adore, and Wayne's done a lot of interviews, and hopefully will do many, many more in his career. And the what occurred with you and Wayne, that's a conversation that just will never ever happen again. And I'm one of those people who believes that if you're out there watching and you want to write a book on parenting, it doesn't matter if there are 200,000 other books on, let's say, spiritual parenting, that it can never come through another person the way it would come through you. Yeah. And I think that's where voice comes in. I was thinking about what is voice when it comes to being on stage speaking, being on a video, writing a page in a book, that to me, finding our true voice is when we let our spirit, our soul, our mind, our body, our heart come to the page. Yes. Or come to the video. Like, that's our true voice.
And that's what we're all called to do right now, to find our voice in life. Not the writing, yes, the videos, yes, but just really in life, where we're called to be who we are really. And so this is an invitation for so much juiciness to happen. I know we could speak for hours. And we are going to through this whole process, and I'm really, really honored to have met you, and that Debbie, I'm sure, put us together. She would be so proud of this conversation, and I feel her presence even. So this is Debbie, I love you wherever you are. I know you're omnipresent. Gosh, so thank you. Is there something else that you want to leave us with that feels right and precious here in this conversation?
Yeah, well, gosh, there's a lot I would love to share. I first want to also say it's such an honor to be here with you too. And to be here with all of you. And I guess I would just like to finish up by saying one more thing about the resistance piece, because I think whether you've written 25 books or whether you're on your first, I think that resistance can be this beautiful, beautiful invitation. Because it teaches us about ourselves. And when procrastination or tiredness or self-doubt or comparison pops up, whatever form it takes, that it could be because there's something so important about what you have to say that, I think it's when, and this is something that actually Debbie talked a lot about in her workshops and trainings, which is that anytime we're about to step into our bigger shoes, into our bigger work, that is when those kinds of forms of resistance can really pop in. So I'll leave it with this, that it could be a sign, and it probably is a sign, that you're right on the trail of the most important thing you could be doing.
And because we put so much too on our shoulder, or we know it's important, and then that creates even more change because the perfection or whatever we're coming from is just popping in. I love that. Oh my goodness, thank you for bringing all this up.
Thank you for talking with me, Lilou. Yeah,
I could go on for hours. My goodness, isn't she lovely? What an angel! I told you she was an angel. Right. Oh my goodness.
throwing my jewelry around.
Big kisses, my delicious co-creators, wherever you are around the world. You are so blessed. We are so blessed, and you're fully supported. You know that, and you fully have everything you need to fulfill on your dreams right now. We send you much love, and Debbie, wherever you are, gosh, we love you. Gosh.
Thank you so much.